What happens when you mistake a quiet marriage for a dead one? How does the soft hum of a desktop printer, once a comforting background noise, become the deafening soundtrack to your life's complete and utter demolition? And can one single, stupid night, a night you told yourself meant absolutely nothing, excavate a truth so meticulously buried that you didn't even know it was there, waiting to ruin you? I know the answers now. I live inside them, in the hollowed-out space where my life used to be. It all started because I was bored. Or, that's what I told myself. The truth is, I was arrogant. I had a beautiful life with my wife, Clara. We had a home filled with light and books, a small garden she tended with a devotion that I found both endearing and, if I'm being honest, a little dull. We had a daughter, Maya, whose laughter was the only music that ever seemed to truly move Clara. Our life was a masterpiece of quiet contentment, a carefully constructed terrarium of peace. And I, in my infinite foolishness, decided to throw a rock at the glass just to see what would happen. Clara was a woman of quiet routines and deep, unshakable calm. She was an archivist for the city, a job that suited her perfectly. She spent her days preserving history, organizing chaos into neat, acid-free boxes, creating order from the entropy of time. Her love was like that, too. It wasn't a bonfire. It was a pilot light, always on, steady, and reliable. I used to find that beautiful. But somewhere along the line, my perception shifted. Her steadiness began to feel like stillness. Her calm felt like apathy. I craved noise, drama, a spark. I work in corporate strategy, a world of sharp suits, loud presentations, and performative confidence. My boss, Julia, was the embodiment of that world. She was 15 years older, with a razor-sharp wit and a way of looking at you that made you feel like the most important person in the room. She praised my ambition, my fire, she called it. She saw the things I wanted Clara to see, or so I told myself. The validation was a drug. Clara never gushed about my presentations or my quarterly reports. She'd listen, nod, and say, "That sounds great, Alex. Did you remember to pick up milk?" Her world was the concrete, the real, Maya's scraped knee, the leaking faucet, the parent-teacher conference. My world was abstract, a game of smoke and mirrors, and I was starting to prefer it. The inciting incident, as they say, was a conference in Chicago. A major deal had just closed, largely thanks to a strategy I'd developed. Julia insisted I come, that I take a victory lap. Clara was, as always, supportive. "Of course you should go," she said, packing my suitcase with a precision that felt more functional than loving. She laid out my shirts, my toiletries, even a small framed picture of her and Maya for the hotel nightstand. A gesture that should have felt like a tether to home instead felt like a chain. The conference was a blur of applause and champagne. I was the star. Julia toasted me at the celebratory dinner, her hand resting on my arm just a little too long. "You're brilliant, Alex," she murmured, her voice a low purr. "You're going places," I soaked it in, every last drop. Later, at the hotel bar, the talk turned personal. She asked about my life, about Clara. I found myself painting a picture of gentle stagnation, of a love that had become too comfortable. "She's wonderful," I said, the words feeling like a lie. "She's calm," Julia nodded, her eyes full of a knowing sympathy that I now recognize as predatory. "Calm is nice," she said. "But it doesn't exactly light you up, does it?" She was offering me a match, and I was foolish enough to take it. "One drink in my suite," she offered. To finalize our world domination, I told myself it was professional. I told myself it was networking. I told myself a lot of things that night, a litany of justifications to drown out the tiny, persistent voice that sounded a lot like Clara. One drink became two. The professional talk melted away. She told me I was wasted in my quiet life, that I was a force of nature meant for bigger things. And when she leaned in to kiss me, it felt less like a betrayal and more like an affirmation. It was just one night. A meaningless, ego-driven mistake. That's the story I wrote in my head on the flight home. I would be a better wife, more attentive, more present. The thrill was out of my system. I had my spark, and now I could return to the quiet warmth of the pilot light. I walked into our home expecting to feel a tidal wave of guilt. Instead, I felt nothing but a strange, hollow confidence. Clara was in the kitchen, helping Maya with a watercolor painting. She looked up and smiled, a genuine, untroubled smile. "Hey," she said. "How was the trip?" "It was great," I replied, my voice perfectly steady. Productive, I kissed her, a quick, performative peck. It felt like kissing a photograph. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She just went back to showing Maya how to mix blue and yellow to make green. In the days that followed, nothing changed. And yet, everything did. The silence in our house, once comfortable, now felt charged. I started watching her, searching for any sign of suspicion. There was none. She was the same Clara. Methodical, calm, present. But I began to notice things. Small things. Her laptop was now always closed when she walked away from it. She, a woman who lived by a paper and pen daily planner, started using a complex digital calendar, her phone pinging with reminders for things as mundane as take out recycling and call mom. I told myself it was just a new organizational kick. Then came the printer. It was an old inkjet we barely used, relegated to a corner of our shared home office. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and heard it whirring to life. I padded down the hall to find Clara sitting in the glow of the monitor, a stack of freshly printed pages beside her. She didn't jump. She just calmly turned and looked at me. "Couldn't sleep," she said, her voice even. "Just catching up on some work." I glanced at the pages. They looked like bank statements. "At 2 in the morning?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "You know me," she smiled faintly. "When an organizational mood strikes, I have to follow it." I went back to bed, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid, projecting my own guilt onto her. The next week, a new filing cabinet appeared in the office. It was sleek, gray metal, with a formidable-looking lock. "What's this?" I asked. "Oh, just for household stuff," she said, sorting through a pile of mail. "Warranties, tax documents." Wanted to get everything properly organized, properly. That was a Clara word. She did everything properly. I started looking for evidence, for proof that she knew. I checked her phone when she was in the shower. Nothing. Her email? Nothing. Her browser history was a dull litany of gardening websites, library databases, and recipes for lentil soup. I was going crazy, living in a state of high alert inside a home that had never been more peaceful. I started picking fights, small, stupid arguments about laundry or leaving dishes in the sink. I wanted a reaction. I wanted her to yell, to cry, to accuse me of something, anything. It would have been a relief. But she never took the bait. She would just look at me with a tired sort of patience and say, "Okay, Alex. I'll handle it." Her calm was no longer a gentle harbor. It was a wall of ice. She was there, but she was unreachable. I felt like I was screaming in a soundproof room. The breaking point, for me, was finding a receipt in her coat pocket. It was from a coffee shop downtown, one we never went to. On it were 2 items, 1 black coffee and a charge for 1-hour consultation. It was tucked in with a business card. On it, in crisp, embossed letters, was the name of a prominent family law attorney. My blood ran cold. I confronted her that night, the crumpled receipt in my hand. "What is this, Clara?" I demanded, my voice shaking. She looked at the receipt, then back at me. Her expression was unreadable. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, but it wasn't anger. It was finality. "I think you know what it is," she said softly. "Are you leaving me?" The question hung in the air, pathetic and small. "I'm not angry, Alex," she said, her voice quiet but clear as a bell. It was the most terrifying thing she could have said. "Anger passes. This is different. I'm just done." I started to spiral, the justifications and denials pouring out of me. It was one night. It meant nothing. It was a mistake. I loved her. I loved our family. I begged, I cried, I promised. She listened patiently, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't interrupt. When I was finished, panting and hollowed out, she simply stood up and walked into the office. She came back a moment later holding a thin, black binder. She placed it on the coffee table between us. There was a single white label on the spine, printed in her neat, block handwriting. "Documentation, I don't need your confession," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "I have the facts." I opened it. My hands trembled so badly I could barely turn the pages. It wasn't a collection of sordid private investigator photos. It was worse. It was a monument to her methodical, quiet diligence. There was a printed copy of my credit card statement, the charge from the hotel bar in Chicago highlighted in yellow. There was a printout of my Uber history, showing the trip from the restaurant to Julia's hotel at 11:47 p.m. and a trip from that same hotel to the airport at 5:12 a.m. There were cell phone records, showing the call durations between me and Julia in the weeks leading up to the trip. There were even screenshots from Julia's public Instagram, where she'd posted a picture from the celebratory dinner. In the reflection of a wine glass on the table, you could just make out my phone, face up, with a notification from Clara on the screen. A text she'd sent me that night, which I never answered. It said, "Hope you're having a good time. Maya misses you. We love you." Each page was a sterile, undeniable fact. Each highlight a quiet little stab. She hadn't been snooping in a rage, she had been compiling a report. She had approached the end of our marriage the same way she approached her job, with meticulous research and unimpeachable sources. "How?" I whispered, unable to form a complete sentence. "You left your laptop open one morning," she said simply. "Your credit card account was bookmarked. I saw the charge for the hotel bar. After that, it was just a matter of looking. All the information was there. You're not as careful as you think you are." The final page of the binder was a proposed custody agreement and a schedule for separating our assets. It was fair. Devastatingly, heartbreakingly fair. She had thought of everything. She hadn't been ignoring me for the past month. She had been preparing. She had been building her case while I was busy building my lies. The next day, I was in a meeting, presenting a new strategy to our executive board. Julia was sitting right across from me, smiling encouragingly. In the middle of my presentation, the conference room door opened. A man in a cheap suit walked in and asked, "Is there an Alexandra Gable here?" Everyone turned to look at me. He walked over, placed a thick manila envelope on the polished table in front of me, and said, "You've been served." He then turned and walked out. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked at Julia. The sympathetic mask was gone. All I saw on her face was cold, professional calculation as she assessed the liability I had just become. In that moment, I lost everything twice over. The divorce was quiet and efficient, just like Clara. There were no arguments, no dramatic courtroom scenes. There was just her binder of documentation and my signature on a series of papers that dismantled our life. She got the house, of course, and primary custody of Maya. My lawyer said it was the most open and shut case he'd ever seen. I moved into a sterile, beige apartment across town. An apartment filled with new furniture that had no history, no meaning. The quiet here is different from the quiet in our old home. That quiet was full of life, of unspoken love and shared history. This quiet is empty. It's just the absence of sound. I see Maya on weekends. She's happy enough, but there's a new reserve in her eyes when she looks at me. Clara is always polite during the handoffs. She asks if I'm doing okay. She speaks to me with the gentle, detached kindness you'd offer a stranger. She is not angry. She is not sad. She is simply finished. I lost my job a few weeks after I was served. The optics, they said, weren't great. Julia didn't even have the decency to fire me herself. She sent an email via HR. The spark I had chased turned out to be an explosion, and I was the only casualty. Sometimes, on a Sunday evening when I'm feeling particularly pathetic, I drive by our old house. My house. I park down the street, under the cover of a large oak tree. Last week, I saw them in the front yard. Clara was pushing Maya on the tire swing we had hung together 2 summers ago. Clara's sister was there, sitting on the porch steps, laughing at something Maya shouted. The evening light filtered through the leaves, dappling them in gold. They looked like a painting. A perfect, complete picture of peace. And I was where I belonged, on the outside, looking in. I finally understood. I had mistaken her quiet for weakness, her calm for complacency. but her quiet was a fortress. Her calm was her power. While I was chasing loud, fleeting validation, she was quietly, methodically, and properly saving herself and our daughter from me. I had wanted a spark, and in the end, all I did was burn my own life to the ground. Now, all that's left is the silence and the chilling, unshakable knowledge that I have no one to blame but myself.